Hi, Francesca. Thanks for taking the time for us. You won second prize in this year's essay competition. Congratulations. I was just wondering if you could say a few more words about yourself. Sort of what's your background? Who are you exactly?
Yeah, so my name's Francesca. I'm from the UK. I'm currently studying a postgraduate in law at Lancaster University. And prior to that, I also studied an undergraduate degree in law, also at Lancaster University.
Okay, lovely. What inspired you to participate in the competition, Francesca?
Yeah, so obviously I've always loved animals. And at university, so in my undergraduate degree, I was lucky enough to study animal rights law a little bit. And I've tried to kind of follow that through in my postgraduate study. And this competition seemed like such a great way to apply my knowledge and also allow me to research an area of interest further and also educate myself on a lot of issues a little bit more. So it was just a great opportunity for me as an animal
Amazing.
lover. Yeah.
And how did you go about writing the essay? Was it an easy process? Did you have a particular method that you always apply to essay writing, or how did you do it?
Yeah, I just generally kind of went with the same approach that I used for all my university essays. So I always like to kind of keep revisiting an essay. I'm someone who I'll do a bit now and then I'll come back to it the next day or in a few days' time. I find that I always have sort of new ideas when I look at it again and read through it, and I think, oh, I should add something to that bit or take that bit out. So I'm somebody who, yeah, I like to kind of get like a draft written, but then I'll keep coming back to it and keep finding new articles that I can read to really kind of enrich my argument. So yeah, it was pretty much the same approach that I would use for a university essay for the competition.
Interesting. So a bit of an evolution, sort of you have a draft and then you keep working on it until you're happy with it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So moving to a sort of more substantive question, you have this really interesting line in your essay where you say that, I quote, the biological similarities between humans and animals are not reflected in legal similarities, end of quote. Can you say a few more words about what you had in mind with that particular statement?
Yeah, so I guess when I was writing that, I had the animals that I had in mind in particular were sort of primates and higher order species. Um, and I think I'd been reading about cases in which the Non-Human Animal Rights Project had tried to extend legal human rights to animals. And a lot of the reasoning was based on the sort of biological similarities between humans and animals, possessing similar sort of cognitive traits and um, rationality and these quite advanced, complex human-like traits that certain animals also possess. And that sort of formed the basis of their legal argument in court as to why human rights should be extended to animals. And so I thought it was just interesting that, you know, these, I would say, like apes and gorillas and those sorts of primates do possess such stark biological similarities with humans. There are sort of evolutionary distant cousin, if you like, and yet legally speaking, you know, um, like an ape would be more comparable to like a chocolate bar or something really like, an inanimate object. Um, the difference, the legal treatment between humans and animals is so stark when the biological similarities, are there to see. So it's just interesting the way that the law treats animals when you actually look at the science and you sort of ask yourself, is it justified? This huge differential treatment. So I guess that's kind of what that line was getting at.
That's fascinating because the sort of a response to that might be to think, well, okay, let's argue based on the similarities that, these apes or elephants or what have you possess with humans, that these animals should have rights. But in your essay, you take a critical stance with regard to sort of biology-based arguments about these animals are sentient or they're autonomous and therefore they should have rights. You think that's actually a problematic argument to make. So why is that exactly? Can you elaborate on this thought?
Yeah, I think I was kind of playing devil's advocate almost in my essay and sort of saying like we need to take account of the fact that there are such biological similarities between us and animals, but equally if we use these criterions such as sentience or autonomy or rationality, if we use those as the criterion for having legal rights, I just feel like we're at risk and in danger of neglecting and almost legitimizing the exploitation of animals that don't possess those traits. And those animals are already, massively exploited anyway. And I just feel like if we sort of neglect them further, that's only gonna get worse. So, like I said, I think I was sort of playing devil's advocate because a lot of people do see sentience and autonomy and things as the reason why we should extend legal rights to animals. But I don't want us to then um, ex- exclude animals that don't possess those traits. So I was just kind of trying to give a voice to those animals, I guess.
That's really fascinating. And you also give a voice to them by presenting an alternative framework, the sort of ecofeminist framework that you outline in your essay as an answer or in response to those problems. Can you just sort of explain to the listener how that ecofeminist sort of framework works?
Yeah, so I guess an ecofeminist framework kind of follows on from what I've just said. I think ecofeminists tend to view the common criterions that people put forward as to why animals should be granted legal rights. So, for example, rationality is one. Ecofeminists view those as kind of being based on kind of masculine patriarchal values, like ecofeminists tend to place much more emphasis on those instinctive kind of feelings that we get when we see an animal suffer, like empathy and compassion. And if it strikes us as being wrong, when we see an animal being abused or exploited, if it strikes us as being wrong, then it is wrong, even if the animal doesn't, lacks language or autonomy. We can still see that that animal's suffering. So I guess ecofeminists just kind of reject the traditional sort of criterions that people put forward and say, if we have compassion for these animals, that should be enough. That should be enough for us to grant protection to them. So it's just an alternative way of governing our relationship with animals, I suppose.
That's very interesting. And I don't want to sort of throw a curveball at you, but I thought it was interesting where you said in the essay, we shouldn't just focus on sentience when, extending rights to animals. And sort of, I was wondering if you think the ecofeminist perspective was open, say, to extending rights or legal personhood to, sort of rivers or mountains, the kinds of things that we're seeing, being granted rights to in sort of, rights of nature cases that are sort of popping up all around the world. Do you think that framework applies to those cases? Is that a good thing in your view, a bad thing?
Yes, I think an ecofeminist framework could apply to giving rights to nature. I think I don't have all the answers at this point, and I don't know where the line should be drawn as to who we, what entities we grant rights to. All I know is that from an ecofeminist perspective, even nature, it can be harmed and it can have, the studies coming out about sort of sentient plants and sentient plants. And so it can be harmed. And I think from an eco-feminist perspective, it therefore does make sense to grant at least some rights to nature. Again, which rights you grant and where you draw that line is unclear. But I think definitely an eco-feminist framework does apply to, non-human entities like plants as well.
That's interesting. So it opens the door. Basically, there's the possibility if, nature is vulnerable, then it too could be granted rights under that framework, even if, say, it wasn't strictly speaking sentient in the way that, humans are, or mammals are, or have, you know, cognition, or what have you. That's really fascinating. Maybe just to sort of slowly wrap up the conversation here, how did you find the process of writing the essay? Was it fun to write?
I found it fun, but like I said, I have a massive interest in animal rights issues anyway. But I think even if like you've never really looked at this area before, it's so fascinating and so interesting, and such like an emerging area of law. You know, like the issue of animal rights, even in like recent like weeks and months, has gained a lot more increased coverage, especially in the UK. There's been quite a lot of high profile animal rights protests, and so it's very much an emerging area of law, and in that sense it's very exciting to research. And as I said, for me, like it's an area that I've been interested in for quite a while, and it gives me a great chance to, as I said, educate myself further and develop my own arguments, you know, because my own sort of views on these things changed as I've read more and more literature on the issue. So yeah, I've personally found it a really fun experience. I would recommend it to others as well.
Great, because that brings me to my last question. If you've got any advice for people who may want to participate in the future in the essay competition.
Yeah, I mean, definitely go for it. I think also don't be afraid to kind of sort of question your own views, because as I said, it might be that you arrive at a conclusion that's kind of, it's sort of uncomfortable, you know, like it wasn't really an easy conclusion for me to arrive at, to say that actually I don't know if biological similarities between humans and animals, if that is enough, because it would have this exclusionary effect on other animals. Like it's not really a natural conclusion to arrive at, because obviously I want to grant legal rights to animals. So sometimes you have to sort of question your own opinions, and that's why reading lots of different sort of literature and sources comes in handy. So definitely do your research, and yeah, don't be afraid to kind of question your own opinions, I guess.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for taking the time for this, Francesca, and congrats again on your essay.
Thank you so much.